What if you could step inside the mind of your favorite authors? Not their book, not their blurb, but their thinking. Welcome to the author's mind. This is where fiction is dissected, decoded, and rebuilt from the inside out. With your host, Shiloh Creed. Each episode is a deep, honest conversation with working fiction authors. If you write, if you read, if stories matter to you, this is your place. Welcome to the author's mind. I am Shiloh Creed, and I am so glad you are here today. We have an amazing guest with us, Laura Hunter. She is the author of Beloved Mother, a book that won the Indie Book Awards Best Fictional Book of the Year in 2022. So I am so excited to get to learn from Laura about her writing journey and how she writes such incredible books. Welcome, Laura. We are so glad you're here.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
I mentioned that your book won this major award, and as authors, so many of us have submitted our books for either publishing or we have submitted them to contests. What did it mean to you as a writer to have your book win such a major award?
It was my first novel, and I didn't realize the significance of the win until I got an email that said that there was money attached. There would be an event in Washington, D.C. to attend, and I would have an opportunity to distribute my book throughout various states in the United States. And I thought, gee, this must be something. And it has really made a good impact on Amazon. Last time I checked, it had over 800 reviews, and most of them were positive. As a beginning writer, I didn't know the significance of the award, and nor did I realize how it would impact other books, as well as trying different genres, different audiences. And since that time, I put together a collection of short stories, and Blue Water Publications published it as Southern Voices. It's stories all of a central Alabama mining town, and the different people who live in it and how they interact with each other. It goes all the way back to the to Natchez, and when the Yankees overtook Natchez, and up until about the 1960s. The book that I think is my most important is Summer of No Rain. I learned of this incident that occurred in 1968 in central Alabama, outside Montgomery, Alabama. This was the signing of the Civil Rights Act, and Johnson gave each state monies to create a clinic, a free clinic for indigent people. And there was a clinic outside Montgomery that carried it one step further and began eugenics practices on young black females, some white females. They sent patients to Mississippi to get appendectomies, and they came back sterilized, but they didn't realize they had been sterilized. So I took a child who was just pre-puberty, and they took this child, my fictional characters took the child in to try to prevent her puberty from onsetting, and they gave her shots. They didn't know how many, they didn't know how much, and she had heard the doctors talking about eugenics, and she thought they were saying blue jennies. So she told her mother she had blue jennies when she started developing sores and knots and that sort of thing. It is the story of her response to the medicine, and that is accurate, historically accurate, as well as her mother's response to it and how she overcame it as a young mixed race child.
Your heart for the South, your heart for people shows through so much in your writing. So
Yes.
When you began to write Summer of No Rain, that wasn't really a plan for you. That
No.
was a story that you heard and that you knew you just had to put on the page. Is that correct?
Well, I found it quite chance. I was in the Welcome Center at church, and our associate pastor had laid out a calendar, and it was a calendar that listed everything that happened day by day to relating to the African American community or society. And I just glanced down at it, and it said July 24th, 1974, Supreme Court rules on Alabama eugenics trial. And I said, year 74, I was married. I had children who were almost 10 years old. Why didn't I know about this? And so I researched it. I researched a number of books that dealt with eugenics, and I found some very troubling things about our country in my research. I didn't include them in the book because I wanted it to be a personalized view to this child. And I asked people, have you ever heard of this? Did you know this happened? Nobody knew anything about it. And I said, well, we need to say something about it. My facilitator, my writing facilitator in Tennessee, Darnell Arnott, suggested that I not write it. She said it will cause you problems. And I said, but people need to know this. You can't put your head in the sand, literally or proverbially. So I wrote it. It has since been banned in the schools in the state of Florida. And I don't know that that has increased its sales or not, but I'm not ashamed of having written it. I think I gave the general public who read it an accurate picture of what happened to someone who was downcast, who was cast aside. Things happened to the downtrodden that oftentimes we don't recognize. They hide them from us. And I think we need to know that in order to be better people toward our fellow man.
Wow, I love your courageous heart that's expressed through writing. That's really a bold step to have had someone counsel you not to do it, but to be willing to tell the story that hadn't been told before. So what is something about your writing journey that most people wouldn't guess?
That I do the majority of my writing in my head before I ever go to the computer.
Now, can you expound on that? Tell me more about that.
An idea comes to me, like the idea about a beloved mother. And the idea initially was to create a family of women who didn't know they were related, and what they did to each other that they might not have done had they known they were related. And to incorporate, because it starts in 1923, incorporate the Cherokee Nation in that, and incorporate the superstitions that are a part of the mountain people. My mother was a mountain person, and she was highly superstitious. She told me a lot of things that have been lost to my children's generation, and I wanted to preserve that for them. So I started out with that idea, and I created these two women who were sisters unknowingly, and they were separated at an early age and went different directions in terms of their religion. One was Old Testament, vengeful God. One was Cherokee, and I included a lot of the Cherokee in the book. In fact, I created the moon and the sun as chorus, responding to what was happening on the earth, as opposed to what they felt in nature should have been happening. These two women got in my head, and they stayed there. I would dream about them. They would walk across my mind and speak and behave in certain ways that I had to put them down on paper. It took me 9 years to write that book. I'm very proud of it, but I'm equally proud of Summer of No Rain because it's a statement that I make about what I feel about the unjust that occurs in our country. Now, I tried to give a lot of the coal mining background and history in the short stories because coal mines are disappearing. The coal mining as it was initially isn't there anymore. And if you don't know that, you can't relate to somebody who has lived through that.
Exactly. I lived in Kentucky for a number of years, and we visited some of the old coal mining towns, and it is astonishing to look at the conditions that they survived and thrived through. It's really touching to be there and see it and remember the people who worked and lived there. So I'm so thankful that you are a voice for people who are sometimes forgotten. When did you realize that storytelling was really a part of who you are? Was there a specific time or moment that you knew that you were a writer?
I started writing in 1994, had to retire from my job because my mother-in-law had moved in with us and she needed 24-hour care. So my husband says, well, it's as if you've gone to the edge of a cliff and jumped off. And I said, well, I sort of have. And he said, well, what could we do to make it better for you? I would love to learn to write stories so I could write stories for our children. The majority of my family had died before they were born, and my mother and father died before they were 3 years old. So he said, well, you sign up at the university as a non-degree student and see if they can take you. I signed up as a non-degree student because the policy is if you miss 3 classes, you receive an F. Well, I've never received an F, and I didn't intend to. The instructors encouraged me to sign up for a degree, and I never knew from one day to the next if I was going to be able to go to class. So I didn't want to take that chance. I just learned what I could. I was fortunate enough to spend 3 semesters with Rick Bragg, who had a great deal of influence on my writing. And I have since been influenced by Silas House and a number of the Kentucky writers and Tennessee writers. So I don't ever foresee myself writing something from the West because I'm not a Western person. I'm a Southern person through and through, and I have to tell the rest of the world what it's like to be a Southern person, specifically what it's like to be a Southern woman, because Southern women are, and I say this in a generalization, but they differ from regular women, from other women. A female from New York would not respond to a situation as a person who has lived her life in the heat and the humidity and the violence that's a part of the South.
That is an amazing look into your writing journey. I know my grandmother is 102 this year, and she was born in Alabama. Her father sold her and her sister to her uncle as slaves, and she worked until she got married. She was taken at gunpoint numerous times. She is an amazing person who doesn't carry the bitterness or the marks from that. She didn't carry that into the rest of her life. So I'm honored to have family legacy of Southern women as well.
That's wonderful.
So I agree with you that there's just something special about the Southern woman. And your stories have so much emotion, such an emotional core to that. Which character that you have developed really feels the most personal to you?
It's the younger sister in Beloved Mother. Her name is Anna. And she is one who, like her older sister, runs away, but she steals another sister's boyfriend, and he promises her the world. He promises her a hotel, to stay in a hotel in Bristol. He takes her to a mining camp, and things go downhill from there. I also feel very close to Margaret Ann Odom, who is the child in Summer of No Rain, because she has to overcome so much, and they're giving her a medication that causes depression and causes her to want to commit suicide, and she survives all that. She survives everything that society does to her. And
that is a true Southern heart, isn't it? When you were speaking earlier, you said that these characters walked through your mind and that they did things that you didn't expect. So which character that you've written was really did something, or that character's arc took a turn that you didn't see coming?
That would have been the man who owned the town, figuratively and literally, in Beloved Mother. He was a user, and he took advantage of people. He was entrusted by the Army to go to the University of Colorado to study engineering, because he had developed some ideas that they could utilize there. And when he came back, he was a different person. Something happened to him while he was gone. I didn't know it was going to happen to him until he appeared in Anna's garden one morning in the mist. And he came to Anna before he went home to his wife, and I hadn't expected that.
Did you, as a writer, hesitate when you saw that scene happening? Did you try to redirect it back to the way that you originally thought?
No, he could do whatever he wanted.
That is an amazing statement. Yeah, these characters can do what they want. And sometimes when you've done a really excellent job of developing a character, they truly do take on their own life in your imagination, and certainly on the page. So it seems like there are some themes and common messages that you return to again and again. What is the tone that you want people to take away from your writing?
Well, as I said earlier, I often write about the dispossessed, the lost, and I write about I view how they can overcome, but I also view how some can't. And that appears in the short stories in Southern Voices. I have one short story where a brother joined World War II, and he was taken as a prisoner of war to a prisoner of war camp in Germany. And he comes back unannounced and wants to stay with the brother, the older brother. And the older brother takes him in. The wife, of course, doesn't want him there because he's an alcoholic. And she thinks he kills her dog. He doesn't kill her dog. She kills her dog because she feeds the little dog chicken bones. And chicken bones will, especially leg bones, they'll sliver inside the dog's body and cause hemorrhaging, and the dog will die if he doesn't have surgery. Well, she blamed him for killing the dog, and she blamed the husband for bringing him there. She just ends up lost. She takes on that bitterness that you said your grandmother never took on. At the end of the story, we see that the war veteran leaves and he throws his whiskey bottle against a tree. The husband stays. He goes in the house and he's got a stash of whiskey for himself. And the wife steps across the puppy's grave and she sees medals that her brother-in-law has placed on the dog's grave. Sometimes people just don't win.
That is such a unique take on storytelling. Let's dive a little bit deeper into your short stories. What is your usual word count?
The publisher says, and sometimes it'll be 1,300. I've had one that was 6,000. It was a story of a child whose mother, like my own mother, was brought into poverty, and how she tries to cope with it, but she fails. So there's one story in there that's 6,000 words long, and then I have written stories for an organization called Press 53, and Press 53 gives you a prompt once a month. You have to write a story in 53 words. And so I have had a couple of them published online. They're not work, they're fun. You write down what happens in a story, and then you click the word count and it says you have 75 words. Well, then you start gleaning out words you don't have to have, changing words so that instead of a word that is serving as a 3-word verb, you can get a more precise verb. It really improves your writing.
That sounds like an incredible writing exercise, and it's very good for us as writers to go off of a prompt, to learn to work off of an idea. I know a lot of writers struggle with inspiration, or I don't feel like writing today. They are wrapped up in the feeling of it. So working off of prompts and creating stories to a specific length is an incredible way to grow your skill and your comfort level. So what do you see in your writing career? How have short stories specifically pushed you to be a better novel writer?
I never perceived myself to be a novel writer. I thought, short story, it's shorter, it doesn't take as much time, and you can write one in a month or two as opposed to a year or two. But I had a short story when I went to a writing conference in Sweetwater, Tennessee. And I just perchance knew about this because I saw a man at a local restaurant here who lives in Birmingham, and I went over to him and spoke to him, and I said, "What are you doing here?" He had come for a doctor's appointment, and I sat down with him and we chatted a few minutes, and he said, "You need to go." And I read a short story to the group, and they said, "That needs to be a novel." And I said, "I can't write a novel. I've never written a novel." So the facilitator said, "I want you all to go home and bring me cards, notebooks." She was very much into 3x5 note cards with a scene on each note card. Well, I couldn't do that, and I knew I couldn't. So I went to the local grocery store and I bought a couple of pieces of poster board and a ruler and a pencil, and I wrote out this forever long story, and she looked at it and she said, "That's longer than Moby Dick. You can't do that." And then I had another one that just went in and out and in and out into the atmosphere that was a second novel. She said, "You got to separate these two." I have never separated them. And then you got to choose one to write, and the one I chose was Beloved Mother.
Oh, what an incredible journey. I hope that our listeners take heart to realize that even if they feel like certain parts of writing are impossible for them today, if you continue on, you don't give up, you just keep growing your skill and keep pressing in, that you can do things that you certainly never dreamed of before. I love your writing journey. Really amazing.
I would encourage anyone, everyone, to go to every writing opportunity as in a teaching opportunity that you possibly can, because you might learn something as simple as, "She was confused." That is not a descriptive sentence. You turn it around. Her confusion caused her to enter the wrong door. And it turns into what you meant to be description, and it turns into active description. An active description is a tremendously different thing from just description.
Absolutely.
You can learn very simple things like that. I did a writing, and she said, "Now, everybody has to delete the word it." I had 100,000 it's in it, in the writing. I had to delete them and substitute a word, a noun or a verb, because the nouns and the verbs are the heart of the sentence, and the sentence is the heart of the paragraph, and the paragraph is the heart of the chapter, and the chapter is the heart of the novel. It just gets bigger.
I don't like The Simpsons, the cartoon. I've never watched them, but someone was talking about the two men that write The Simpsons, and they said they only have one rule, and that is that they can never say "and then." Because if your story says this happened and then this happened, it will be completely flat and useless. And they said the two things that you can say are, "Because of that, this happened." Mm-hmm. Or "Therefore this happened." That in of itself was an incredible nugget to make sure you never write "and then."
I've recommend to writers that, if at all possible, you listen to some music that's going to reflect your writing. If you're writing building up to a scene where someone is hurt or someone is cast out, that you listen to fast-paced music. You're grieving about someone, you listen to grieving music. Well, I was a music major for a number of years, and it's amazing how those rhythms can set into your mind and they'll set into your sentences. So I was on an interview once, and a gentleman said, "Do you think your music had any influence on your writing?" And I said, "Definitely, because for one thing, it was constant. It was demanding. I had to stick with it, and then I had to perform, and I had to show that I had stuck with it, and I had performed, and it impacted the wavelengths in my mind so that I respond to the music through words."
I am a huge fan of listening to music when I write. I don't think I've written 41 novels now, and I don't think I have written any of them without music. And I couldn't agree with you more that the tone of the music you're listening to affects how you write the scene, how it ends up coming out. So absolutely phenomenal advice. Thank you. I really hope that other authors will use that. And I know that a lot of us get inspired. We get an idea for a book while listening to music. So it's really neat that your career was music and writing. Those are two extremely creative functions. What's one thing about writing that you wish you had learned sooner?
Structure. A story has to have structure. Otherwise, the reader can't follow it. And I have read a number of the magic realism novels, and I have trouble following them because they don't have structure. They do have structure, but not a structure I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
If someone had sat me down and said, the story has to have this, and this, just like a play has to have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then I could have filled it in more easily. The last novel that I wrote that's going to be out very soon is called A Family for Us, and I didn't do that. I wrote each event that happened. It's a story of a child whose family is deteriorating. She's daddy's girl, and mama runs daddy off, and then mama leaves the two under the care, if you want to call it that, of an irresponsible neighbor. So she goes to the swamp with her science teacher on a field trip, and she brings a beaver home hidden in her coat. And this beaver is going to substitute for her daddy. Well, it doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work out that way at all, but I did this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, and I had the hardest time putting them together.
Yes, and structure helps us, especially with the speed of writing. And if a writer wants to be able to produce numerous books, structure has to happen first. And I know a lot of writers don't like structure. Some of them will fight against it to the bitter end. But I do believe that if you want speed in your writing, you have to develop some sort of not just structure within the story, but also a structure for the way that you write. I was working on some middle grade books, and so I knew the word count had to be 22,500 words. So, do some simple math. That's 10 chapters, so many pages per chapter. And then you know how much room you have for each scene. So just a simple tweak like that, the knowledge of what you need to put down and where does this scene begin, where does it end, how many words should it be. Some of those simple techniques of using structure like that too can really transform your writing into a better pace, if you will, if you're looking to put out a lot of work. Laura, I have really enjoyed our conversation today. What would be your final piece of advice for other authors today?
Whatever you do, don't give up. I started writing after I retired, and after the first of the year, I have become an octogenarian, and after this year, I will have 5 books, and numerous articles. I don't even count the articles that are published under my name. I don't do it for the fame because I can walk in and, oh, you're the lady who writes, aren't you? And I say, yes, I am. But I don't do it for that. I do it because I have something important to say. I have something that other people may not have thought of that they need to think of and perhaps say even better than I did. So I have a friend who has been struggling and struggling and struggling, and she says, oh, I don't write. I don't have time to write. I don't have time to. Well, you have to make time or you won't write.
So I wrote 13 books. We were traveling in a camper. We didn't ever have like a solid home place because we were traveling for my husband's work. Had 2 young children and 2 dogs. So the only time that I had to write was I would get up at 5:30 in the morning and sit cross-legged in the camper bathroom. And if you've ever been in an RV, you know how tiny they are. But it was the only place I could turn the lights on and not wake the kids up. And so I wrote 13 books that way. Cross-legged on the floor, making the time to write every day. So wow, what an amazing journey you have, and thank you for sharing your story with us. Tell us one more time the title of your book that's coming out and when you hope for it to be released.
A Family for Us is the story about the child who brings the beaver home. And the beaver's supposed to be the salvation. The beaver is chaos. He even builds dams in the house. And in addition to that, there's going to be a biography of my father entitled A Southern Gentleman.
How wonderful. And when do you hope to see these 2 books on the market?
They're waiting for the cover page to be finished right now on A Family for Us.
We look forward to your upcoming releases. Congratulations. It is an exciting year for you with 2 books coming out. I appreciate you being here with us, Laura. You are an inspiration to us all. So thank you so much for listening to The Author's Mind. We will catch you next time.